Gustav Mahler. The man who mastered the symphony. He wrote through questions, through a will to represent the size and scale of the universe, and through a never-ending string of emotions until his very end. During this video, I will take you on a journey through Mahler's life and his music, and how his life influenced it. But he didn't start as an orchestral legend. Gustav Mahler was born in 1860 in Bohemia, which is, at the time, part of the Austrian Empire, and today part of the Czech Republic. His family was part of the Jewish minority living in the region, which from the very beginning gave Mahler a sense of, well, exile, for lack of a better term. Shortly after Gustav was born, the family moved into the city of Jihlava, where his father started a fair, well-off tavern business. After they had moved, the family would see 12 children born, with only half of it making it out of infancy. Side note, Mahler was the second oldest, but his older brother died before Gustav was born. Being surrounded by death, this heavy emotion would later be a cornerstone of his orchestral works. Well, even from a young age, Mahler was surrounded by music, from his grandparents' piano to the street songs that would have a major impact on many of his symphonies. His aptitude for performance and music started from a very young age. He even began to write a memento to his deceased younger brother, but this work unfortunately never survived. Thankfully, his parents supported his musical ambition, and in 1875 he was accepted into the Vienna Conservatory, where he would be exposed to all different types of music that would be seen throughout his repertoire. Shortly after he graduated from the conservatory, he was accepted into Vienna University after his father wanted him to go there, where he would study literature and philosophy. However, it wouldn't stick as he dropped out at the next year, but not before being heavily influenced by many German philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche. But more about that in a later segment. Gustav would float around jobs pertaining to music before getting his first conducting job, which is where our story takes us next. Mahler took his first conducting job in a small theater in the town of Bad Hall, and there would primarily perform operatic works. From there, Mahler would move to the Landstheater in Laibach in 1881. After, he would continue to move around many different conducting jobs until he got his first long-term jobs at the Budapest Royal Opera and Hamburg State Opera, before, in 1898, being selected as the head conductor and music director of the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra until 1908. And after that, he would finish his conducting duties with the New York Philharmonic until his death in 1911 at age 50. Mahler's experience as a conductor is yet another vital influence for his sound, as standing up on the podium gave him much insight into orchestral color, pacing, scale, and so much more. But enough with his backstory. Let's get into the music. Mahler's first symphony was written between 1887 and 1888, and unfortunately for the young Mahler, was not well received. Even today, I personally feel as if the symphony doesn't get the attention that it deserves, but I'm also biased with this being a personal favorite of mine. Despite that, we can still get the key sounds that would define Mahler until his death, with folk dances, a funeral march, and the staple grand finale. This shows Mahler already expanding the emotional range of his music and asking of why things happen, transforming the symphony into a lived, dramatic experience. However, his second symphony would have quite a different reception. Mahler's second symphony is likely one of the most well-known symphonies ever written. A massive orchestra, a complex idea, and an elongated structure, things rarely seen in orchestral music at the time. This was the moment that we see Mahler's questioning become explicit, asking about life, death, and what comes after. We see two major things here. First, this is the clearest and earliest example of Mahler using symphonic form to ask philosophical questions. Second, the reason he is doing this is clear. Those influences that were mentioned earlier from his time in university, like the philosophers, are major for his life, death, and everything after that. Another part of Mahler is that he had this belief that the symphony should embrace everything. It should contain the world, the universe, and everything in between. In his music, this is seen in his contrasts, the use of extremes, interruptions, and a sense that nothing human is excluded. Listening to his symphonies, this is very clear. In his second symphony, sections go from very, very quiet to very, very loud, over and over again, although this is a common theme across Mahler's symphonies. In addition to that, we hear many influences from throughout his life, as opposed to the typical sticking to form that had been previously very common among symphonies, the embrace everything idea that is likely Mahler's best known trait, but it only becomes more clear throughout his middle and late symphonies. His middle symphonies are the most refined part of his repertoire. The Fifth Symphony, known for its famous trumpet opening, takes the listener on a battle against death and despair, and ending with a triumphant finale. The Sixth is nicknamed Tragic, and the music represents just that, likely influenced by Mahler's sad childhood, filled with death. Both use enormous orchestration and new colors, emotions, and so much just new stuff that had never been seen before in orchestral music. Although these symphonies' orchestrations were enormous, it is nothing compared to Symphony Number 8. While being very different in form from anything previous, only 2 movements, the massive symphony typically runs 80 to 90 minutes and marks the end of Mahler's middle compositional period and the beginning of the late period. But why 1,000? Well, although to date is typically not performed with that many, it was written for over 1,000 musicians, both instrumentalists and singers. Mahler himself described the Eighth as a lightning vision, a work where he saw whole before him, and it became one of his boldest statements about the power of the symphony. Instead of asking a question like the second, the Eighth feels like a vast act of affirmation, as if Mahler is trying to show that the symphony can still hold faith, love, and transcendence all at once. And yet, after that huge burst of energy, Mahler would move into a final phase that feels quieter, more reflective, and more personal. Mahler's late symphonies feel like a farewell to everything that came before. His Ninth Symphony, the last one that he completed, is often heard as a goodbye to the world, and for a good reason. The music feels like it's slowly letting go, moving from tenderness to unease to a final silence that sounds less like an ending and more like fading away. The point where Mahler's idea of embracing everything becomes something more than human. By this point, he is no longer just building huge musical worlds. He is looking back at them and asking what remains when everything starts to slip away. He also began his unfinished 10th Symphony, which pushes even further into emotional honesty and fragmentation, as if the music itself is breaking apart under the weight of what he is trying to say. But even unfinished, it shows the same restless search that defined his entire career. Gustav Mahler died in 1911 at the age of 50, but his final works leave behind one last impression, that the symphony was never meant to be tidy, safe, or final. For Mahler, it was a place where the whole human experience could exist at once. Joy, grief, fear, beauty, and the endless need to ask why. And this is why Mahler still matters. He did not master the symphony by making it smaller or simpler. He mastered it by making it large enough to contain the world.